I made something for an audience. I hope that it is like exciting and fun and and makes people feel things. I just cannot speak to what those things are and shouldn't. And I don't know. I just want to throw up even hearing myself right now.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back, guys. My name is Justin. Thank you for stopping by and hanging out with me today to talk about Beau is Afraid. This is going to be my spoiler review. Me and my co-host from Acquired Takes, Jason, we already dropped a long-form kind of first reaction type review, but I felt just so many thoughts swimming around in my brain about this movie. I can't stop thinking about it, and it's so much movie. It is so much to process. It's 3 hours long. It is basically an explosion of the depths of Ari Aster's mind just exploded on screen for 3 hours. It's an acid trip. It's an abstract piece of really confounding, confusing art that can be interpreted many different ways depending on how you relate to the themes and subject matter that Ari Aster is putting forth in Beau is Afraid. This movie is not going to be for everybody. I feel like that's a common phrase, but it really pertains to this movie because, man, I see this movie having a pretty small audience that really connects with it, which I think even Ari Aster would understand. It's no surprise if you've been watching this channel for any length of time. I've talked endlessly about Midsommar and Hereditary, and even I love Ari Aster's short film, The Strange Thing About the Johnsons. If I thought that The Strange Things About the Johnsons is as far as Ari Aster can push insane subject matter, I admit right now that I was wrong because he surpassed all of the weirdness that he's put forth in all of his projects with Beau is Afraid. This movie is an odyssey. It's a trip to Wonderland. Beau is Alice. This insane, surreal, heightened view of the world that he sees, that we see through his eyes, is Beau's Wonderland. I knew going into this movie that it was going to be really bizarre. I know the script leaked a while back, and I saw a lot of comments on the Reddit. I didn't read the script, but people would comment on the script, it's an unfilmable script. There's too much insane shit. How could Ari Aster ever put this script to screen? And after seeing it, I kind of understand why people would say that. The movie 100% relies on Beau's point of view. This is the unreliable narrator situation that we see sometimes in movies like this, where the main character is inside of his own perspective, inside of his own delusions, and 90% of this movie is what he sees, how he views the world. This most likely isn't what's actually happening around him, but a manifestation of all of his anxieties and mental illness. It causes him to view this insane world around him. The movie starts out with a therapy session where he's talking to his therapist, and pretty much right after that opening scene where he's talking to his therapist, that's kind of where this odyssey and this weird, surreal story begins. He has a planned trip to see his mother. He's got his plane ticket, but as soon as he tries to go to the airport, that's when everything starts going terribly wrong. The first thing, he has this horrendous night's sleep where somebody keeps dropping notes under the door saying, "Please be quiet, I'm trying to sleep," and he's doing nothing but laying in his bed being quiet. Overnight, he receives 10, 12, 15 notes. "Please, can you be quiet?" Again, he's making no noise. He gets one note that says, "Okay, you're not going to be quiet, you're going to be louder. What is going on?" And this just throws him into an absolute tailspin. Every time he steps out into his street to try to do anything, to get a drink, to go to a gas station, it is an apocalyptic wasteland with murderers and rapists and people stabbing people and people dead in the streets. Now, in my opinion, I don't think anything that's happening. I don't think any of this chaos is really happening. That's just his paranoia. That's his delusion. That is how he views what's going on in his world due to his crazy anxiety and mental illness. I really love this first 30 to 45 minutes of this movie. I thought this is kind of what this movie was going to be. But after he misses his plane, his mother actually dies in the most fucked up way. A chandelier drops on her head. He calls his mom. Somebody else picks up his mother's phone and describes the scene that he's seeing. He's like, "Beau, what does your mom look like? What is your mom's name? What does your house look like?" And basically he describes what he sees, this person that has his mother's phone. which is a woman on the floor with her head completely smashed by a chandelier. And that's how Bo realizes his mom is dead. When he calls his mom's phone and realizes that he's talking to somebody who has stumbled upon his mom's phone and his mother is dead with her head smashed on the floor. So, now it's his job to go and just try to make the funeral. Once this part of the movie begins, that's where I started to fall out of the movie a little bit. And I feel it kind of diverges into something else that I didn't really connect with as much as the first half. And this is also where it's kind of confusing as to what's real and what's not. As I mentioned, all of that chaos in the streets. He ends up getting hit by a car and stabbed by a lunatic. So you're assuming that some type of this chaos is actually happening because he was stabbed after being hit by a car, and he's brought home to Nathan Lane's house and this actress. They bring him home, and they too have lost a son, so they're kind of treating him as this new foster son that is, it's really bizarre. He stays in their daughter's room, which she is not too happy about, and this whole segment of the movie lasts a very long time for whatever reason. Also living with them is this soldier with PTSD who is constantly running around thinking he is in a war. To me, that aspect of the movie and this whole segment of him staying with this couple, to me, really just seemed a little silly. When he finally does escape, he goes into another whole section in the movie that I found very weird. He finds this theater group in the middle of the woods, and that's where that big section that you see a lot of in the trailer with all of the expressionistic aspects of him growing old and having sons. And I don't know what to make of this whole sequence, except maybe this is what he thought his life could be. He thought his life was going to be better, to have children and to grow into a normal adult. And I don't know what he was trying to say here. I didn't really care for this section of the movie. And then we get a whole nother section at the end of the movie when he finally does make his way to his mother's house, and you find out that she's completely faked her own death and she is alive. And it was somehow this weird test to test the limits of Bo's love for her. And that was another bizarre aspect to this film. And then at the end, at the end of the movie, you see him hop in this boat and he takes off in the water. And my interpretation of this ending is that he died. In the last segment where he's being judged by his peers and his mother and all of this stuff, I believe my interpretation of this is he died. The last shot of the movie, the boat motor explodes, the boat capsizes, and he goes underneath. And I think that's actually what happened. I think he went out into the water and he died. And this weird moment at the end when he's on this boat being judged by his peers, maybe that was him having his white light moment where he kind of his life flashes before his eyes and he reevaluates everything in his life. I don't know if that's the case. That's the way I interpreted it. But this movie gives a lot to chew on. And I think this is only going to be for super fans of Ari Aster and people who enjoy very, very experimental films. At the end of the day, I did enjoy this movie for what it was. I loved how bizarre it was, and I love original concepts. An original concept, aside from an original piece of work from an auteur director, I will always prefer over, another sequel or some director hopping on a franchise. I love to see that he's pursuing his own ideas, as fucked up and crazy as they might be. That being said, this isn't my favorite Ari Aster movie. If I had to rank Ari Aster's films, which maybe I'll do, this definitely won't be in the #1 position. That being said, this is something that I will definitely revisit again at some point because it's just so bizarre. I'm sure I'll pick it up on physical media because I want to experience this movie again. I waited so long for it and my hopes were built up so high that I don't know what I was expecting. I think I was expecting maybe more of a linear story. You can't help but compare it to Ari Aster's other work, so I thought it was maybe going to be just a very experimental horror comedy. And in essence, it kind of is, but it's so much more than that, and it's so much more abstract. So at the end of the day, I do recommend seeing it for Ari Aster fans and experimental film fans, but I just don't know how many people are going to actually respond to this movie and find that they enjoyed it. I know people are walking out of the theaters, people are saying it's the worst movie of all time, and I think to some, it may be. who aren't used to that kind of movie. I watch a lot of weird shit, so it wasn't the weirdest movie I've ever seen, but it definitely was, for Ari Aster, a little bit more than I was expecting in a lot of different ways. So as with the spoiler-free review and this one, it's a little rambly because this movie is almost impossible to pick apart. Every single person who watches this movie is going to interpret it something completely different, get something different out of it, and I hope it finds an audience. I don't know. I don't know. This is a very perplexing movie and an interesting turn in Ari Aster's career. I wonder, in my previous review, I compared it to Robert Eggers' The Northman, how he kind of got a blank check after a couple successful smaller films. He gets the blank check movie and goes fucking wild, and nobody knows what to do with it. So time will tell if this is a cult classic or not. I don't know how that's going to turn out, but it's definitely a lot of movie. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of Ari Aster's Beau is Afraid. Check out my other content. I've posted a ton of videos on both channels. On the Dead Couch, I just dropped my Terminator 2 Arcade 1-Up and my Pure Arts T1000 Deluxe Art Mask Bust. I dropped showcase videos on that. Tons of other shit that I won't mention here. I'll link some of my other videos down below, guys. But I think we're done here. Stay weird. Remember to always be yourself, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.